So at some point next week, something really big is going to happen, like history is going to kind of go, former president of the United States is going to be arraigned on the charges that are alleged of falsification of business records. Could be a campaign finance violation if they decide to I'm going to get a little arcane here, if they decide to tie in the federal part of that crime they're alleging. And the former president's going to be fingerprinted and mugshotted and walked into a courtroom to enter a plea, which is why talking to his lawyer, Joe Tacopina, right now is really, really important. And he is live with me now. So, Joe, I have heard you had your reaction that the president was shocked. You were shocked. You learned this from the New York Times. Has the president said anything further since his initial reaction to hearing about the indictment in Manhattan?
Not really, Ashley. I mean, he's ready to go. He's ready to fight. I mean, he's, obviously was very upset and shocked. And I was shocked. We were all shocked because even though we'd heard and there were rumors and, all this, we just believe at the end of the day, rule of law would have prevailed. And, there is no crime. Actually, there's not even a bad act here, let alone a crime. And I've spoken to 3 former FEC chairmen, Federal Election Committee chairmen, who have echoed that sentiment. I don't know how they think they're going to prevail in this case. They won't. But it's got to the point where this clearly is weaponization of the justice system for political purposes. And it makes me really, as a lawyer, it makes me sad. And as a lawyer for the person who's being victimized, it makes me angry.
So you, I am guessing, are probably not a whole lot different than me in that the indictment is sealed, so you don't know what's in it, but we are hearing upwards of 30 charges. Are you assuming, with that limited information, that this is about each check that Michael Cohen wrote to Stormy Daniels, so each one of those represents a charge?
I guess so. Again, I don't know how they think that equates to a crime. This is a federal election. Federal campaign laws are in effect. Actually, it's very simple. These civil settlement, which is done every day in every loft in New York, was done with personal funds, not with campaign funds. With company or personal funds, not campaign funds. That's the distinguishing factor. Not like John Edwards, where he had a donor pay. This was a confidentiality agreement settlement, which happens all the time with personal funds. And the bright line test for that, statutory law for that, for election violations is, was the payment made irrespective of the campaign? Was it made irrespective of the candidacy? And obviously the answer is yes. Even Michael Cohen, when he, came to Jesus and pled guilty and decided, he was going to be a truth teller, even though I don't think he knows how to do that. He said it was in part to prevent personal embarrassment for the president and his family. That takes it out of the realm of campaign finance violation. And
so
listen,
can you talk a little bit about that?
That comes from 3 FEC chairmen.
So can you talk a little bit about that with me? Because I know you've had personal conversations, obviously, with the president about this. What does he say about the personal embarrassment then and now? Because he's still married to Melania. What has his reaction been? Because that's what I'm assuming the defense is going to be, right? It's that he didn't want to embarrass himself in front of his wife as opposed to affect the voters. And you tell me if I'm wrong in that thinking.
Of course that's in fact the case. By the way, let me be clear, Ashley.
So what's he
said?
He
adamantly denies he had affair. Adamantly. But by the way, Stormy Daniels wrote 2 letters in which she attested to the fact that she did not have a sexual relation with Donald Trump. So, this case is built on literally serial liars or people who haven't told the same story twice. And it's an unbelievable situation that the first indictment of a former president of the United States of America is going to be held based on the words of 2 people who've told wildly inconsistent stories. I mean, beyond wildly inconsistent, and based on a payment of a legal civil settlement of a case, which had no ramifications for the campaign finance laws in the federal government and the federal.
So if this ends up being litigated, because you're so good at your job, if this ends up being litigated, I can't wait to see you at work. If the president said he didn't.
Go Go ahead, Ash. I'm
Well,
sorry.
hold on. I got a tough one for you. I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
If the president said I didn't even have an affair with her, Donald Trump's not the kind of person who goes quietly, and a hush money thing for something he didn't do doesn't sound like him. And I feel like that's going to raise its head in this case if that's his defense. Meaning, he's not the kind of person who would hush. He would loudly proclaim her to be a liar and tell Melania that too, and tell the public that as well. So why all of a sudden this different tack, this different strategy from the president to pay hush money to someone he didn't have an affair with, if that's his defense?
There's two answers to that question. Let me get to the real answer to that question, and then we'll talk about the ramifications. The real answer is Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels' former lawyer, this guy Davidson, who was initially arrested by the FBI for trying to extort Hulk Hogan, worked out a deal. So the president wasn't part of that deal, wasn't a part of that deal. Michael Cohen signed the settlement agreement, which I've never heard of, and Stormy Daniels and her lawyer signed it. That was the initial instant. And then Cohen went and said, I resolved this situation. I didn't want this to come out, embarrass your wife, embarrass your kids. And at this point, the settlement was done. But let me make something very clear. Whether he did or didn't have a relationship with our one-night stand, even though he adamantly denies it, and so has she, but even if he did, it doesn't change the fact that that is not a crime. There is civil settlements in these sort of cases every day. They're consensual relationships, allegedly, and when their cases are settled, they're confidentiality agreements that are done. It happens all the time. And honestly, for the amount he paid for a man of his stature, it's like me paying $5.
Well, it's the accounting. It's the accounting that will be the issue, and I think that's where the DA is coming at the president, right?
Something, Ashley. There has to be something.
And that's what I'm curious about. I agree with a lot of the analysts who say that there are a lot of pitfalls in this case, especially if the underlying misdemeanor is connected to a federal campaign finance violation, because then you're like mix matching state and federal issues, so it could get a little messy. But let me ask you this. The lawyer for Stormy Daniels, Clark Brewster, gave this comment today, and I want to get your response to it. Clark said this: the indictment of Donald Trump is no cause for joy. The hard work and conscientiousness of the grand jurors must be respected. Now let truth and justice prevail. No one is above the law. What's your reaction to Clark Brewster and Stormy Daniels, Joe?
I could really care less what Stormy Daniels has to say about the president's indictment or what her lawyer has to say. I mean, the second they came out of the grand jury, they didn't even testify in the grand jury. The second they came out of the DA's office, they tweeted and held press conferences. I mean, it's so pathetic that this case was in the press every day because Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels' lawyer, went out there and announced exactly what was happening inside the grand jury. I mean, the DA any normal DA would be mortified by that and understand that the pathological need for media attention is a real problem for the credibility of witnesses. So, she's written books, he's written books, everyone's writing a book. She said something completely opposite to that, twice in letters. So either she's a liar then or a liar now. Michael Cohen hasn't told the truth. He wouldn't know what that word even meant if it hit him in the head. I mean, he was convicted of 7 crimes: lying to banks, lying to the IRS, lying, regarding his tax medallions, lying to Congress. I mean, the guy is. Hey, Joe. Can
I ask you just logistics?
Yeah.
Because I was so interested to hear you learned of this today from the New York Times, not from the DA's office. But there's a Tuesday court date on the docket in front of Judge Juan Merchan, and I'm wondering if you have now been told that. And I've got 10 seconds left, but do you have logistics ready to go, or you haven't even started?
We have nothing ready to go because we're still waiting on how the logistics are going to play out, Ashley.
Okay. Joe Tacopina, I can't thank you enough. I know you're driving, so I do appreciate you jumping on the phone with me. And it was we would have planned something better. It was a big surprise. We'll get you on when we know more.
I wasn't ready today for this, so okay.
I so appreciate it. I'll have you on, let's say, as soon as we know more about this, we'll do a better face-to-face. Thanks, Joe Tacopina.